Just take a deep breath, confident.
Bro, you've done this 6 times already, so.
There we go. There we go. So, hello everybody. Welcome to our podcast, A Light in the Darkness. Today we have our guest, Benjamin, and we got another Ben and Illy over here, our
Hi.
co-hosts.
We're back.
And Ben, would you like to tell us about yourself and why are you the way you are?
Well, I'm Ben Tkachuk. What else tell me? I serve in ministry. I lead one of the Bible studies group with a few friends. Serving also events team and wherever, God finds it desirable for me to serve. The way I am, it's all because of Christ. Otherwise, everything else, it's not worth talking about.
Good answer.
Best one so far.
Yeah. What do you do outside of, what do you do for work?
For work, I work for a construction company. Aside from that, it's hobbies, and just anything else, helping people out and so on. Awesome. There's plenty of stuff. Just there are more important things to talk about.
Anyways. All right. Let's jump into the verse of the week. The verse of the week is James 1, verse 2 through 3. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I guess, Ben, we'll ask you, what do you think of this verse?
Well, it says the testing of your faith produces perseverance. It's think of it almost like you go to a gym. You're trying to grow in the gym. What takes you to the next level is being consistent, putting that effort in. If you just sit there and taking yourself, selfie in the mirror every day, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, that was me.
And so that's what it takes. It takes a grind, a daily grind of testing the faith and to produce the perseverance, to be able to stand against the battles you have daily in your life. We have the issue kind of where we humans love our comfort. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it actually undercuts us really bad because you never grow in comfort. You always grow under pressure, and that's what we're called for as Christians. So that's something we should strive for and actually be happy because it brings us closer to God.
Yeah, interesting. Never thought of it that way.
These verses also provide comfort, talking about trials. When we think about trials or hardships, we're like, oh no, why is this happening? But this is reassuring us that we can persevere, we can get through that, and it not only makes us stronger, but it improves our faith, which is really important. So it's kind of like a little motivational quote too.
It is. An interesting part of that is a lot of times we fear trials and kind of God, why is this happening in our life, and so on and so on. But we look at people like Apostle Paul and stuff, and people like that. They were happy to go through trials because in trials they got to rely more on God, and God got to glorify. They were able to grow closer to God. So these are the moments that they grew closer to God and grew stronger in God. And so He loved them. And he even said through all the shipwrecks, beatings, jail, everything He's gone through, He's like, I'd go through all that again for Christ, because that's where His heart was. It was all about Christ, and glorifying God and growing closer to Him. And it's we look at ourselves and we're just we're running from trials, and we're these are actually opportunities we can grow closer to Christ.
Yeah.
It's a good question to raise. It's how truly do we love Christ? At that point, if we're running from the opportunities where we can grow.
Yeah. Which is easier said than done.
It is.
Exactly. And I mean, definitely these trials can beat you down and stuff, and I'm sure they are meant to beat you down and make you realize what you've done was wrong, and or
just
what you're going through.
Just shows you how much you need to rely on God, how much your life depends on Him.
Yeah, just without Him, you're nothing.
Literally.
That's it. But yeah, it forms you the way you are, just like Ben said today. It's why is he the way he is? Because Jesus. I personally would have said trials.
Okay.
I got deep.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'm not judging you or anything.
Not in front of you.
Hey, I'm going to stick to my answer. Jesus is everything, man. Everything else about me doesn't matter.
Exactly. That is true. That is true.
And so that kind of ties in with our topic, which is trusting God. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get into practical aspects of what that actually means, I guess a good question is like, do we feel like we do trust God in our daily lives or no?
Well, we can set ground. Let's say, what do we define trust as?
Exactly. That's a good
What is
question.
Yeah.
trust, just in general?
Exactly. I was just about to say that. What is trust? So I'm a little bit illiterate. Would you want to tell me what trust is?
Illiterate.
Yeah, that as well, but
Let's say if you trust somebody, can you put your faith in somebody? You know,
yeah.
be able to share something private, like a secret, and know that they're gonna hold it private.
Yeah.
You know, be there when times get tough. You know,
Yeah, in
good
the
or
hopes
bad.
that they're not going to like betray you or backstab you or give up on you.
Being reliable.
Reliable, yes.
reliable.
Exactly.
And that's what we usually look for as in trust, let's say in friendship with trust, and we like to think, actually, this is an interesting thought where we like to, that's what we search for. And we like to think as ourselves as a trustful person. Like, I don't really know anybody I've ever asked, do you think, can I trust you? And they're like, no, you can't trust me.
Yeah.
I've never met somebody. But what's interesting as we go through life is there's people that we can't trust. Like, that. But yet nobody thinks they can't trust. So, like, the question is, it's good to turn around and ask ourselves, like, if we never meet somebody that says you can't trust me, but yet we can't trust certain people, and start raising the question, am I maybe one of those people that, possibly thinks, that I'm all trustworthy, but truly I don't really live up to it.
Yeah.
And it's a good question to kind of raise up and double check, because we humans naturally have that kind of a higher view of ourselves.
That's true. We build ourselves up while looking kind of down on everyone else.
Yeah.
Not always, but usually across
Well,
the board.
it's, I guess, probably about being humbled, right? And a good lesson my dad taught me and I take through life is будь строг к себе, but не судитель остальным. Be strict to yourself, but more lenient, I guess, with other people. And that's what we always need to start off as with ourselves.
Yeah.
And when it comes to trust, before we even, I guess, expand out trust further out, is making sure that we ourselves are the people, we're searching to somebody we can trust, but yet if we're not living up to that standard, which we are humans, we fall short, that expand, but in general, if we don't live up to the standard, it kind of becomes almost hypocritical or selfish.
Yeah.
One thing I feel like that's important in trusting God is, in order to trust someone, like just in everyday life, to trust your friends, your family, loved one, whatever, you have to have a good, strong foundation with them, like a good relationship. So how can you trust God if you don't have a relationship with Him? So I think that's where you have to start, is if I'm not trusting God, like what is my relationship with Him like? Does it need more work? Do I need to, maybe confess something or work on something, Before you can fully trust God, you gotta have that foundation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think so. It starts off with this relationship, and when you're checking on this relationship, I think so it jumps back to the same thing of why don't we trust God when, let's say, when we get into an emergency, we're like, I gotta do something, gotta do now. We make our own choices without like even thinking, like, what does God really consider in this? Even though I'm not saying that you pray about something, God has to give you an answer, but God generally gives you will. Does it glorify me, and so on and so on. And it's like, sometimes, we're so rash and jump upon stuff, and we're not trusting God. And you ask at that point, why do you not trust God in those situations? Or like you go through tough times, like Hebrews 11 talks about being in the rest, which there's kind of two parts talking about in the rest of in salvation, but it also talks in the rest is being in peace in God. Do you trust God so much that you can be at peace at heart, no matter what storm throws at you? And we are humans are, often, we lose our peace, and, we should start asking why. Why are we not in that rest? Why aren't we fully trusting God? And I believe it's often at our core. We look too highly upon ourselves. We think, if we fully didn't trust ourselves, truly looked at ourselves for who we are and didn't trust ourselves, I believe we would be more reliant on God. You look
Yeah.
at Paul, and Paul's like, he looked at his, where I'm weak, God has made strong. Like, that's where he cared, because he knew he'd fall short and God would have to be there, and that's the moments he desired. And it's like, it's just human nature to always think highly of ourselves. And like this is an example. I was listening to a well, he's a psychiatrist, Jordan Peterson. He brought up this book called Ordinary Men, which brought my attention. I read it, and it brings out this. It's like it was during the time of World War II, during Nazi Germany, and you had Auschwitz, and you had, also you had all these soldiers here that were bringing people in, just murdering these people, burning them, gas chambers, and like you take first of all ourselves, and it's like, if I was back then, naturally we'd be like, if we were put into the situation, Nazi Germany, where somebody tried to force us to be guards, we'd fight it. We'd be like, I'm not going to go murder all these people. I'm not going to kill all these people, gas them and do all this evil stuff. But what he brings out, and it points out in this book, is it's talking about this platoon, of, believe they were police officers originally. And they were born pre-Nazi Germany, to where they weren't born into all the propaganda, like the use of the Nazi youth was. So they grew up in civilized area, family men, have kids, wives, and so on, so like respectable, people. And so an order comes through where their commanders gathers them, and it's like, we're going to, I believe they went to Poland. And we're going to Poland. We're going to do some very kind of like immoral things. If any of you guys decide to, step down or kind of leave, I'm not going to hold it against you guys. And so they load up, head out to Poland. I believe it's Poland. And what happens is, it's like over a short period amount of time, I'm talking like, I think it was like within a few months, it's like these honorable men, which seemed, like that family men, respectable men, or police officers that weren't born into the propaganda, within, a few short months, they were dragging like pregnant women out of beds, pulling them to fields, shooting them in the head, and they were sick with themselves. This what's crazy is they were sick with themselves. They'd be thrown up, but they wouldn't stop. They had that camaraderie that they wouldn't leave, and so on. And these are people that were respected, that had morals, that had children, and within that short amount of period, they were able to drop so low. And like what was pointed out is that we as humans, no matter how much we think we're good, we're not. That's the reason we need Christ, and we're not good. We're just absolutely not good at the core. And it's like, when that was pointed out, I just realized it's like we are so corruptible. We want to think that we can withstand. We'd be the person that holds the high moral ground, against a situation like this. But like most people wouldn't.
That's great.
We would be pressured into it. Most people wouldn't, and we'd end up in the same boat. And like that's the issue when it comes to trust. Is like we start thinking that we have some good moral value that we could stand behind, and so on, so we can make that good decision. And it gets in the way of trusting God. And it was when you truly start evaluating yourself and seeing that truly there's nothing good in you except for Christ. Only then can you start realizing that you need Christ. You have to trust in Christ to make any sense out of your life, to get anywhere in life, to be satisfied in life. It has to be Christ. And that's the thing is like, that's what I brought up earlier, where we think too much of ourselves and we start trusting in ourselves in certain situation. But it takes like Paul. You see, Paul was always brokenhearted. It was all for God, all for Christ. And that's the reason why he fully could trust. He entered this rest and peace that no matter what storm threw, what the life threw at him, he was always in peace and calm. And I believe that's a lesson for us. It's like, do we truly look at ourselves for who we are? Being humble isn't like, You do something good, somebody's like, oh, I did something good, like I did, somebody yelled at me, I didn't yell back,
What a good person I am.
what a good
Yeah.
person. That's like this false humbleness, but that's what often we see right now. People make this like, it's like virtue signaling. And but true humbleness is being able to look at yourself and seeing that, there's nothing good in me. Only good thing is Christ. And my life belongs to him, and glorifying him and just fully trusting him, being content, with what I have.
So I guess we can say that like trusting God has to start with humility, humbling yourself, seeing yourself for who you are. Because like you said, if you see yourself for who you are, you're going to realize like I need someone who is perfect, who is just, and that's only God, only Christ.
Exactly. At the same time, we make sure that there's nobody then above in our life than God. You can ask the question: are you at peace when you don't get something that you want? If you really desire something and you're so close to get it, you work so hard to get, let's say, some car or some article, something that you really, really want, and something just happens, cuts you off. Are you going to be at peace? Are you going to be like, why did that happen to me? If you're not at peace when you don't get something that you want, it points out one thing in our life then is that you have found a identity in that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And when you found an identity, really what that becomes is that has become your God.
Idolizing the wrong things.
And that's one of the biggest issues you see now. It's like most people think about, you ask what is an like idol, or nowadays, and most people be like, oh, a phone, clothing, cars, houses, and so on and so on. But the biggest thing people miss is a lot of times it all trickles down to one thing: is we make ourselves gods. Because what we do, the reason we get so attached to physical, materialistic things is because of ourselves. We desire, we want it. It's all about me, myself, and I.
We had a
And-
previous episode about idolatry, didn't we?
Yeah, idolatry.
We talked about this.
Episode 4, I believe it was.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
We're on 6, right?
I
yeah,
think so.
I believe it's just
Well,
getting somewhere.
and I'm not going to dwell long on it, but
No.
No,
But-
you
but-
can talk about it.
well, but that's the idea. It's like you realistically, all these things lead down to yourself, and you're making yourself God. And that's, again, it comes back to the trust issues. Is if you're living for your flesh, you make yourself God. How are you going to trust God when it's all for you? It's all selfish. It's all focused for you.
Yeah.
Jesus gave everything for you, and here you are still just like, I want to live for myself. That's what you call kind of carnal Christians. Paul talks about it all the times. Why do you have strife and envy? He says, because, you're carnal, and that's what he calls to grow greater, to grow to maturity, spiritual maturity. And
Another thing, it's really easy to trust God when everything's going the way you
I was
want
gonna
it.
say
Yeah.
that,
It's
yeah.
like, things are happening the way I want to. My prayers are being answered.
Yeah, when life is easy.
Life
it's
is
easy to
easy.
trust him.
Oh, I have such a good, I trust God so much. But then as soon as, like that verse, trials come, things aren't going exactly your way. Maybe God isn't like giving you a direct, clear answer to your prayer. That's when
Yeah.
it gets hard to trust God. And that's when it's most important to trust God. You're not supposed to just, only focus on him or be happy with your relationship with him when things are going your way. That's the exact opposite of what the Bible's
Take a
teaching.
look at Job. That's a really good example of
Oh, yeah.
trusting God. He was put through many trials, and he trusted him in all.
Yeah.
that's we're going with one of the Bible studies, and we're going through Hebrews, and it kind of has a chapter. It's kind of like this. It's a hall of faith. You know how you have a hall of fame?
Yeah.
It's like a hall of faith, and it just goes through and just talks about, like from Abraham and Abel. It just goes through and names it all. And God gives all these people, that put faith in him, promises. And what's interesting, it's like for like halfway down the chapter, it starts bringing up. It's like that most of these people, like what God promised, actually didn't come to pass during their life. Like it didn't come to pass. But the thing is, it didn't happen during life, but they still held so strong. Like you look at Abraham leaving his father's house, just traveling and so on, and so many other, heroes of faith. And it's like that faith, that they had, the trust they had in God, where did it come? And what it points out is where it was is that they weren't looking at this worldly stuff. Like it said, if they wanted to return, they could, but they didn't hold to this worldly stuff. They held for something better, for something that God has created. And that's kind of points out to us. It's like where is our hope and faith in? You know, are we again getting too tied up with this world around us, or is our hope and faith with God? And we find all of our importance, everything that's valuable to us, you know, with God, and that's what helps us trust Him. You know, to be able to put that faith, and that's like I said, it's like a hall of faith, and that just puts it's like a signature for all of them. You know, if we truly want to, you know, have that life that has that faith, that trust in God, I believe that has to be a core. You know, that was a core for all these people. It has to be a core for us.
Yeah. I've never heard that term, Hall of Faith. That's cool.
Also, like understanding who God is too, you know, His nature, understanding that He's all powerful, that everything's in His hand. So, you know, whenever you're going through like trials and tribulations, you understand that He has it all under control.
Yeah. And even then, it's like we desire in trials, tribulations, things turn out the way we desire.
Yep.
But accept God the way, you know, God knows better.
No matter the outcome.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is sometimes we get too stuck on desiring what we want. And it's not what we want. You know, it's like if I go through a big trial and come out with a loss, being able to accept that for what it is. And, you know, still being happy with it, with whatever it is. And it's just for, I guess, even especially in the first world country, we like here out in the West, we have everything. We are ridiculously spoiled. We live in comforts. Like whoever was born in the U.S. and hasn't traveled outside, I suggest traveling to a third world country. When you get to see how people live day to day, when they don't have everything, and like you'll see, like we'd go to. So we've been doing missionary work in Mexico, and originally when we came to this really poor part of a city where there was an earthquake a few years before that, so everything was kind of demolished, and so people were like living it. They take a few pallets, knock them together, throw some cardboard in between to kind of so you can't see through, and they'd live in that. Like there was a small it would fit on the stage, literally it would fit on the stage. Probably it's smaller, just a square box built like that, and there was like a family of like 4 or 5 living inside there, like rains, like it wasn't sealed. You got wind blowing through, and so on. But here's what was crazy. I was finding like in a third world country, it seems they had nothing, you know, and but yet it's somehow they were so always happy,
Grateful.
grateful, happy. Like, you know, people would say like, oh, you know, everybody's in poverty, but it's like, it's even the culture where like, instead of working these long hours, like sometimes here in the U.S. we'll be like working for success to achieve something, these long hours, they'd work a few days, you know, got enough money to relax for a week, go home, you know, get a drink, blast some music, spend time with family. And so the crazy, it's like, you know, and those are like worldly people, but their priority, they were still content, and even in places like that. And then we look at ourselves, Christians saved by God's grace, having everything we need and so much more, you know, and we are so unhappy. And, you know, like every time, like, you know, I worked in sales for a while, and I met like a lot of wealthy people. And they were some of the saddest people I've met. And because I love digging into people's stories, you know, because people are really interesting. You're like, if you're talking to somebody and you're bored, you're not doing something right.
Yeah.
Realistic. Like every person is so interesting.
There's got to
when you
be
start,
something there.
yeah. When you start like, you know, talking to them, kind of dissecting, opening lives. But that's one thing I found is, you know, like like the richest people sometimes seem to be some of the most saddest people. And you look like even like regarding suicide, even like it's the rich people that hold kind of like the highest statistics for suicide and stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
they get all that success and there's nothing to work for anymore. You just kind of
well, it's just because it never buys you true happiness. Like
Right.
you'll have temporarily. Well, it comes down, I believe, to this. So God created everybody for the purpose to have this relationship with Him and to glorify Him. And so it's like this hole in our, you know, in our just being, that a desire that needs to be fulfilled. And people go around life trying to fulfill it. And so typically, naturally, us being in a corrupt state as we are as humans, we try to fulfill it with sin, you know, or just to make ourselves happy. And what it does, it gives us temporary satisfaction, and after a while it burns out. reason why, like say even with drugs, there's like gateway drugs, you know, and other stuff like sin escalates because you never truly satisfy. You know, you look at why do people get so crazy about like political movements, you know, because it's they get into this I guess azart. I don't know how you'd say exactly in English, but it's like they get into this like pulled into it, and it's filling that hole. Even though it's temporarily, it's not truly giving satisfaction, but it's giving them this purpose, and they're obsessed with it, and people go crazy about it. But truly, the only thing that truly can fill it to where you're just fully satisfied, content, without having to run around do crazy stuff to try to fill it, it's really Christ. That's really the only thing that can do it. And that's what happens is like, you know, people, you know, wealthy people, it's like they reach this pinnacle where they can have pretty much anything they want to, and they realize it's like there's still not a satisfaction, because the satisfaction, that joy in life, comes from Christ. And that's the thing is, it's like if your joy comes from something that's temporary, it's gonna be temporary, and the only thing that's eternal is God. You know, so like if that's your core, God, then your joy is going to be eternal, you know? So you got to, that's a situation, and, you know, and that's, you know, it's just interesting.
Yeah. Like another thing is like a lot of people seek this happiness, and to reach this happiness, for instance, they say, I got to make a bunch of money so I can be happy. And like when I hit $1 million, then I'll be happy. So they work their whole life, and around 40, they hit $1 million, and then they're happy. They're happy for about, let's say, a year tops, and after that they're done. You know, they might have been happy working up to that time, or becoming more and more happy, but then after that they're kind of dead, because they've reached their happiness and they don't want anything else.
What's
you know?
next?
Yeah, what's next? But if you have Jesus set, and you have the reward set as what was gonna be your happiness, then you're spending your whole life working towards that. You're doing everything you can towards that. You got your priorities straight. You're living it right. And then when you reach it, then you get a reward that it's eternal. Like Ben said, it's eternal, and it's a great reward.
Yeah, not only do we have eternity to look forward to, but while we're here on earth, we have inner peace.
Yep.
Like that's such a huge difference compared to, like we were talking about, like the world, whatever. Having that inner peace sets us so apart from these people who just have emptiness inside of them, or their lives is filled with chaos, you know. But if you know God, if you believe in Him, if you trust Him, you will have that inner peace, and you're able to rejoice. And no matter what, you know, which is so different, which is something that's kind of unheard of, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that inner peace that keeps you going too, because, you know, no matter how hard life gets, or like, you know, people from the world might see like your situation, they're like, oh, if I was going through that, I don't know where I'd be, or like I'd be so depressed. But again, it goes back to like why are Christians, true Christians, always happy? Because they have that inner peace. Again, why? Because we trust God, because we know that no matter what it is, He's taking care of us. He knows what's better for us, and we just trust Him.
Yeah.
A thought just came across my mind. Paul got beaten and thrown into prison, and they were singing songs. Think about how crazy that seemed to like the guards. Like, we just beat these guys, threw them in prison. Here they're just
Didn't beat them
singing,
up enough.
worshiping, and it's like again, it comes back to that joy, you know, and this peace in God, you know, and it's again, it comes back to who is Christ for you, and that's often what I believe is a shortcoming in modern Christianity is it's just grown so lukewarm. Well, you know, there was I don't know if it was a preacher, theologian, said that if modern Christianity was a poison, it wouldn't kill anybody. And that's often what happens is we've grown to such comforts that we have truly like missed the point. We are under this guise of Christianity. It's almost like we're Pharisee, where like, you know, a lot of modern churches will go under this guise like of some holiness and stuff like that, but like inside it becomes empty. You know, people become legalistic and just focused, you know, on like showing some piety. But when it comes down to the core, do they truly know Christ? You know, is Christ really, truly their life? You know, you'll ask people, you know, who's Christ for you? And they're just like, He died on the cross for me, so saved. You know? But it's like, what about the relationship? What about that love for Christ? You know,
The happiness you get from it.
and it's just, you know.
And that's scary because, you know, it's reassuring to think that I have like Christians surrounding me, but you never know at the end of the day what that personal relationship looks like. And then I think Jesus said, like, if I came back, how many of you would truly? You know what verse I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, even actually added, kind of building off of that is also think about the verse that where it talks, the verse that talks about the one where Jesus says like when God comes in, you'll say I did miracles, I did this, and say I won't know you.
Yeah.
That's
Think
what,
about
yeah, yeah.
like
think it was in
do miracles and stuff like that, and
John.
still not
don't know him. Yeah.
and that's really what it. It's like that's how important actually having a relationship is. Truly, and it's just there's a lot of false stuff, and the devil's been around for a long time. He knows how people work. He knows how we tick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's
so,
very intelligent.
and I believe one of the biggest deceiving things he's gonna do is have, churches, that look like, everything's good, but truly preach, preach something that makes everybody think they're saved, they're good, but truly not. Not have a real relationship with Christ, not search for Christ, have some kind of maybe, I don't know. We see it around. We see it around in places that it's all about like emotions.
I just recently saw about a documentary. I forget if it's on Amazon or HBO or something like that, about a documentary about the corruption behind the Hillsong Church.
I saw that.
And it's like, I haven't gotten around to watching it, but I really
Yeah.
want to. And how they literally engineered or like purposely created their music in a way that manipulated emotions, that made you feel a certain way, and you're like, oh wow, this is from God, but maybe it was just made that way purposely to elicit some sort of. And then like monetarily, there's a lot of corruption that goes on in like big churches. Sad.
Kind of look at that and then think about it, how a person who's in the world and not knowing of God and what he can do, they look at people like that.
Oh, look
And
at
then-
Christianity.
Yeah, and then they're like,
What a shame.
what a shame. Well, who are these people? They're not any better than me.
Yeah.
I think so. The issue, like not talking about specific churches, but there's a lot of like this false idea of what worship is, in the aspect that everybody like. There's this big idea of it's like this emotional thing, about singing, about being moved and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when scripturally, when God calls us to worship, it's not about our emotions. It is what God desires. Like when He talks about worship, first of all, worship isn't only singing or music. It's also worshiping God in your actions, worshiping in what you say, do, and think, and everything.
Your words and your thoughts too.
And it's not about how do we want to worship God. It is how God wants us to worship Him. That's the biggest mistake I see now. It's people are like, I don't like this song, this, and this, and this. It's like, what? Like think about the angels. Like God created all these angels to fly around Him and sing, "Holy, holy, holy is the God Almighty." Imagine if one of these angels one day it's like, God, you know what? Like I had this new idea. Really fire.
Hear me out.
Let's do
hear me out.
something different.
Yeah, hear me out. Really fire. I got this new song. Like,
I have a banger coming out. Stay tuned.
but then what's crazy is you think about it. It's like that's exactly what Satan did. Like he thought he had a better day. He deserved some glory. He had a
New
better
and
idea.
improved, yeah.
And like, and look what happened to him. And so it's like we need to search. Like when we study Scripture, we search what God desires. Instead of it's not what we want, but it's what God desires. We might want a lot of stuff. Might want even answers, but God knows more what we need. So that's why we ask God. Like, I'm reading the Bible. I'm trying to find an answer, for this and this problem. But whatever you desire and whatever I need, that's what you open up to me, because you know truly what I need. And so that comes down to, again, it's like in worship, it's about what God desires, not what I want to. It's like we don't know better than God knows. And so yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like another thing, kind of back to like topic of churches, another thing that like really shows a lot is just how happy the people are when they come to church. Like, are you genuinely happy to, worship God, glorify His name? I see some people come in and it just looks like they just come just to show up, And then I see other people come in, they're all happy, saying hi to everyone. You can see that light in them.
Yeah.
That,
For sure.
Well, we got to make sure we're the light. But
Exactly.
what's it's interesting. Like you look at churches, Like here, example, there was a church in history known for its donations. Like they were getting so much donations that Shobras Divide, like they had to create a specific group to handle that. People would be selling, houses and stuff like this. They'd be worshiping, they'd be ministering to the poor, to the weak, great services and stuff like that. The Corinthian church. But then you read Corinthians, Paul's talking about like all these sinful
Calling them
issues,
out.
crazy sinful issues in the church. So like you really look at like you can have a church that does a lot, but it's still gonna have plenty of issues. You look at which church was it in? Revelations was talking about where about first love, and it's it was being written. God was saying to the church, it's like you guys like
Is it Fiesca?
maybe Fiesca. You're probably right. It's like you guys, like pretty much like great in ministry. You guys even really good at telling who's false teachers, and you know how to root them out. And you guys are very effective. Like it's a very effective church. Did so much, but what he held against us still. You guys потеряли вашу первую любовь. That church could be so effective, but that love was gone. And so like that's so like often can be deceiving what's going on. And so what it really comes down to is like every church is going to have an issue, but it starts, we can judge churches like, oh, look at that church, they have this and have that. But like that's the wrong approach. The right approach is look at ourselves and what influence am I doing in here? God doesn't tell us to run from the church just because of issues. No, like I said, the Corinthians had a ton of issues, but yet they did so much. And so like, what am I doing to be the change?
Change comes from within. It has to start
Exactly.
from within.
When Jesus told the Uchinikam, like the world, like they will know you by your love for one another. Talking about the people from the outside will see that love for one another. Do we truly love each other and take care of each other, as Christians, as church, a family? Because the church isn't the building, it's the family, it's the people. Do we truly have such strong love and care for the people that the world outside looks in and it's like, why is that so different? Because the world loves where like, you rub my back, I rub yours kind of thing, and like, and it's just so temporary. And you see like, marriages fall apart after 2-3 years as soon as like, if you read studies, on psychological level, like that lovey-dovey part falls apart and they're like, oh wait, I don't love this person. It's like, well, that's not what love is. People have this such false idea. And, but yet we as Christians, if our love is driven by God, which is agape, the highest level of love, it's supposed to be like unconditional. Like, yeah, somebody wronged us. Well, who cares? Like, this is a soul. Jesus died for it. He spilled blood for this. How dare can I go talk negative behind their back? Do something evil and revenge for them. Like Jesus died for them. I can't do it. I just need to love because this is a very sacrificial price was paid for them and for me. That often stops. Like if you actually really look at the church and people, let's say that kind of you have beef with, and you think about it like Jesus died for this. He went through all the torture. He spilled his blood, and like, what's the craziest thing is he was actually at the moment separated from God. That was like, some people think it's the beatings and everything, which was the most, like the worst part of it all. No, he was actually separated. That's why he called out to God. It's that separation, being three in one, three persons in one being, and being separated at that moment. It was the full loneliness that he had to endure to carry our sins. He did that for each one of us. And like, how dare, it's like spitting in his face when we go after another member in our church. And it's like, we need to value one another. We're a family, same blood spilt. And it's just, sometimes we get so carried away with ourselves, with, our egos. Like, how dare he do this to me?
The smallest things shouldn't matter.
And it's just like, and it comes back down. It's like all that, it keeps us, coming back to the main topic, keeps us from trusting God, being able to put our faith in God fully, because we're too obsessed about these trivial and like, how dare somebody say something against me or to me or do this to me. Again, it puts like, again, that's, you think something of yourself when you're not, because you deserve hell and Christ is the only way out of it.
Yep.
Dang, that was deep. That was really deep.
That was
Write
good.
that down.
I thought we kind of like steered off topic. You kind of.
Well, we went around a lot of topics.
Yeah, but then you kind of like
But then like
Going
everything,
back
like
to the main topic,
faith-wise, it all connects.
It does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's important.
Everything we kind of talk about in these episodes, that all kind of, there's like a thread, you know, that it's about all
All
about
goes
the same
back
thing.
on.
Yeah, like you
there,
started
yeah.
talking about idolatry a bit. We talked about that like, what, 2 episodes ago?
Being a light in the darkness.
Also,
out.
yeah.
Yeah. Just putting Jesus in the
Priority.
first
Mhm.
place, and everything goes well. Well, I think that was all, right? We got everything, touched on everything.
For wrap up, think practically. Where do we need
Oh,
to
yeah,
start?
practical.
Where do we
Yeah.
need to start to be able to trust God fully, the way we look? Let's say Apostle Paul did. Where does it start? I'll just say from my side, starts with genuinely being able to look at yourself for who you are. There's nothing good in you except for Christ, and it all goes to Christ, and that He knows you better. Is being able to fully see yourself in the light of, compare yourself, instead of comparing yourself to other people. Just look at Christ and His purity and compare yourself to that. And once you see that, you realize that's all you need is Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good final point.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in today. We are live every other week on Thursday at 8. So you guys turn on the post notifications and watch out for our episodes. And make sure you are a light in the darkness. And you guys have a good one.